Thanks for joining us for Khari Free at Last on Bounce23 TV. I'm Khari Enaharo. And joining me is TalkTainmentRadio.com host Earth Jallow, the Reverend John Coates, and Donella Martin-Braddix. Liberia's defense minister says that the Ebola epidemic has killed more than 2,200 people in 5 African countries and now poses a threat to Liberia's national existence. The Ebola pandemic began in late February in Guinea, while UN agencies were conducting nationwide vaccine campaigns for 3 other diseases in rural districts. The simultaneous eruptions of the Ebola virus in widely separated zones strongly suggest that the Ebola strain was deliberately introduced on unsuspecting humans as an act of biowarfare to control West Africa. Wow. John, do you agree with those allegations?
You know, you said Ebola, I say Ebola, okay? because maybe this may be a little truth mixed with falsehood as well.
What do you mean?
Well, we don't know what the real origins of this of this disease is. We don't know if it came from the monkey who makes an appearance again, or from the monkey always. Whenever they talk about Africa and disease,
always
this monkey pops back up. It was the green monkey with AIDS, and now we have this other monkey.
The darkest continent. All of that racist,
the dark continent.
All that racist stuff.
So we don't know. We don't know if it's a bat. We don't, which introduces that whole vampire theme. We don't know yet.
John, but come on, John. Look. Don't you find it curious that this pandemic just erupts right after the UN and pharmaceutical companies have been over there doing experiments, allegedly trying to find an antidote? Some say it could be, you got some biowarfare folk that are over there. Don't you find that, Donella, a little bit suspicious?
Well, you know, speaking of biowarfare, we know that the United States is not above using it. We already know we have precedents. The smallpox blankets that were given to Native Americans in order to clear them out, the United States is already guilty of that.
So you're saying yes or no, you find it suspicious?
Well, there's a precedent for this, and I say it's probably possible.
Do you find it suspicious?
Absolutely suspicious.
Oh, goodness
yes, without a doubt. Without
Why
a doubt.
does it take 20 minutes to answer a question?
Because I have to get it out, Khari. I have to.
I know that's
They know when Donella Martin-Braddix starts, you got to stop her.
Lord, please. Earth Jallow, jump in here. Do you think that's suspicious?
Absolutely, it's suspicious.
Why?
From my research, I understand that it usually starts.
Whoa, wait a minute, stop the press. She did some research.
Y'all not going to try to play Earth old Jallow here today. Sisters, I've got her back.
Oh, please watch out. She got your back. Anyway, go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. From my research, I found that it usually starts in rural kind of areas, you know, and then, you know, you have to come in contact with that person, whether it be body fluids, you know,
if it was natural.
Absolutely. And so this is very, very suspicious that it would have an outbreak in 3 major countries, you know, over in Africa at one time, and then you got 2,200 people who have already died. Come on, man. There's other viruses like the adenovirus that is also known to cause excessive bleeding. With the UN over there making all of these so-called humanitarian
What does the Ebola virus do to the body?
Well, the first symptoms is severe headaches, muscle aches, spasms, then, you know, diarrhea is very prominent. And so,
vomiting.
Vomiting.
Right.
Bleeding.
So bleeding.
Absolutely.
From everywhere. Internal, external bleeding. So it's a very ugly and very painful death.
And the thing about it's hard to diagnose. They've had cases of some people who felt fine up until one day, and then within hours, they were dead.
And we know that Africans, in some people's minds, are viewed as less than humans. Black people in Africa view. So why not experiment on them?
Why not experiment on them? Absolutely.
And they're viewed as being dirty. And dirty. They
Which
say
is
that
not true.
That the Ebola virus, that it rests on the skin. So therefore they said avoid contact with people that may have it. So don't shake hands, don't touch you.
This may very well be the worst disease we've ever seen.
Oh, very
and we don't even know if it's really Ebola. See, because, you know, when you
think it's man-made?
I do. I think this is a form of terrorism as well. Internal terrorism because you have all of the media that's pushing it's overwhelming. It's going to be, it's an outbreak, which means that, oh my gosh, people are
using
just
all
falling.
these rush
all
words.
of these, all of these, cold words that are not. It's terrorism. It's panic. It's
Now
panic.
we know
So
what-
you don't believe it's as bad as it is?
No,
Is that what you're telling me?
Because we can't go and see for ourselves.
Answer yes or no. You don't believe it's as bad as it is?
I don't think that is what they say it is.
Oh, you agree
she
with
can
that,
go,
John?
she can go see for herself.
Oh.
We'll take a trip over to Liberia right now and visit
Listen,
and visit
yes.
folks.
Senegal
Go ahead,
as well.
you
There-
know.
Senegal
there
as
are-
well. I
there
would
are-
like to see.
Now
Yes.
we know what the O stands for and
the
Earth
what?
O Jallow. It stands for Orwellian.
Oh, wait a minute, hold on. I'm black, not African. Up next on Khari, free at last on Bounce23 TV. Welcome back to Khari, free at last. I'm Khari Enaharo. And joining me is TalkTainmentRadio.com host Earth Jallow, the Reverend John Coates, and Donella Martin-Braddix. A new Oxford University study says that untold millions of black people in 15 new African countries are at risk for a massive Ebola outbreak. Yet millions of African Americans show more interest in the outcome of a football game than they do in the destruction of Africa, their ancestral homeland. Why? John, wait a minute. You got these African Americans over here who care more about Ray Rice, care more about Adrian Peterson, care more about the Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns. They don't care about what happens to Africa. Explain that to me. Where's the disconnect?
Beyonce and Nicki Minaj.
Keep
too.
going, yeah. Where's the disconnect?
I
What
love
happened?
you, Nicki. I'm praying for you.
Let me tell you something.
know, the difference.
If the Irish over here heard something about happening to Ireland, they'd be all over top of it. Germans, they'd be all over. Italians, all over top of it.
I never thought
What's
that
wrong with
I
us?
never thought that I would quote lines from Roots so many times in 1 year, okay? It is the Fiddler syndrome versus the Kunta Kinte. We're just totally Americanized and caught up in whatever we're caught up in. We don't even have...
So I'm black, not African.
Well,
I have no connection to
you
Africa?
have no connection.
Yep.
You have no connection to Africa.
How did that happen?
Well, how that happened? Americanization,
They
slavery.
stripped you.
They
The
stripped
Italians
you.
were Americanized.
That's one of the problems.
Chinese
but they
were
still have their
Americanized.
culture.
Like we came.
They still. That's why you can go to Italian village.
Yep.
That's why you can go to Chinatown.
village.
But yet you don't go to no African village
That's
nowhere.
right.
You know,
That's
because Americans are guilty of the greatest crime ever committed in humanity. They stole our language, our land, and our culture
Donella,
from us.
Yes,
white people
absolutely.
still identify whether they're German, Romanian, Italian, Swiss. They always are concerned about their homeland, as well as the Chinese, Latinos, everybody but black folk. Why?
Well,
And
Khari,
yet we got this Ebola virus that threatens to kill millions of people.
well, on one level, I have to correct you. There are a lot of white Americans who are so Americanized that I've asked several white people, what's your heritage, what's your ethnicity, and they don't know.
It
They
must
say,
have been
well, I'm
just
a
one or
mix.
two, because most of the
Well,
ones I know can trace
well,
it back.
let's face it,
But
that's
that ain't the question. The question that I'm asking you, and you need to answer, is what's wrong with us as African people?
Well, it's the same thing that Pastor Coates was talking about. It's Americanization.
you agree with Coates?
I always agree with
we in
Coates.
trouble now. Lord,
Is that right?
have mercy.
Listen,
We'll find
I
out
think
later.
it's a disconnect. It's a total disconnect.
She don't have the answer.
Go ahead.
Hold on.
It's a disconnect, and I think I agree. It's a disconnect. People don't. Americans here, blacks don't want to go back and visit Africa. They don't want no parts of it. Most of the churches, they don't talk about that. They don't talk about
Well,
what's going on.
How
You know,
would you
I
know?
have
Wait,
to
how would you
disagree.
know what the
You
churches
heard.
talk about?
I
You go to
heard.
church and find out what's talked about
I
in the
have to
church.
di-
Well,
you know
last
what?
time she went,
Yeah, they
she
go
did
to
find
church.
out,
I
and
have
they
to
wasn't talking
disagree
about it.
She
with
went to a white
Wait a minute,
church.
hold on. Go ahead, Donella.
There's a movement of black people who want to go back to
Yes,
Africa,
that's
who
true.
want to reconnect with their African roots. I just heard on the Tom
That's right,
Joyner
there are 5 of them.
show where someone was talking about how they went to, Africa and traced their DNA history.
That's wonderful.
So it's a lie
That's
that black
but
people
that's
do not
wonderful.
want their
Donella,
history.
that's
the thing
wonderful.
about it is we've been cut off from our history. And the thing about it is what we're not doing is we're not accessing the real live links to
around.
our
Say
history
what
right
now?
now, which is the African tour here. The African
it's-
tour here. We need to connect with the people who are already here. We cannot connect with a culture that we are thousands of miles
You know
away
what?
from.
That's
Instead,
wonderful,
get an
and I agree
African
with
friend,
you.
and
Wait a
that's
minute,
how you
hold on,
connect.
Donella. Go ahead.
I agree with you to a certain extent, but Khari and I just did a radio show where he asked these type questions about Ebola, and the callers were black, and they called in. What did they say, Khari? They said they don't want to go to Africa. Africa. They are not African, and this was
No
not one or
association.
two.
No association.
There was not
No
one or
association.
two callers. This was a plethora of callers.
Oh,
where he
I
would,
love that word,
Well, he would
plethora.
tell you, I had to sit back, and he had to say, "You okay? You all right?" And I was appalled by the calls
But you
that
know
were
what
coming
also
in.
helps us make a disconnect with Africans?
What?
We meet Africans. We
Whoa, what's that got to do with
we
anything?
meet them from various parts of the continent.
That should be
And
bonding.
No,
That
it
should be bonding.
It should be bonding, and we greet them with open arms, but yet there's a superiority complex
not so.
that they
Not
have.
so.
Oh,
No,
right.
you have a
No,
superiority.
you have
No,
superiority.
you have a superiority.
I have spoken with Africans who say they admire African American culture so much, and it's their dream when they come here.
What, to be a
actually
hip-hop artist?
To be,
What?
and then what happens
To be
is
rude
that,
and disrespectful,
what
wear your
happens
sags down your
is that
no.
we don't embrace them. We talk about their accents. We talk about how different they are. We don't embrace them. So we are directly...
Are we still talking about how they smell also? Is
Yes.
that
all
what
of
you're talking
that,
about?
all of that.
Oh,
So,
that's
you know,
crazy.
there
That
is
is
a
just-
longing to connect. There just needs to
So,
be the
John, has there been a
Right.
purposeful campaign to disconnect us from Africa? Because we should be all over this Ebola
It's the
situation.
campaign.
All over
It's
it.
the campaign of Americanization. That's the purposeful campaign. It
didn't work on the Italians. It didn't work on the Germans.
But
It didn't work on the Irish. It didn't work on the Chinese.
We would have had more of a chance when we were segregated to make a connection
To
with
keep the
Africa
identification.
than to be integrated into society, because as we integrated into white society,
lost.
what we had of our own began to disintegrate
Yes.
before our very eyes.
Right.
So we lost this whole notion of identifying with Africa. If we were, if there was evidence that we really identify with Africa, what would we be doing about this Ebola situation?
Oh my
Earth?
goodness, we would be on the ground. First of all, we have to get on the ground because we cannot take the media's take.
We would send our scientists in.
Absolutely, we would have scientists. We would be developing our vaccine for our people. And I also said this before, that the Africans are very intelligent people. And I know that if they had the opportunity to go into a lab, they would be able to find
And they
a
did
cure
in
for
Kenya.
whatever
In Kenya, that's what they did. AIDS was killing the people. So
Yep.
the Kenyan scientists,
So
along
give
with
them a
American
chance.
scientists, came along and developed interferon.
They
It
are-
worked.
Give them
They
a
are
chance.
threatening to shut down the continent of Africa. There are thousands of Africans who have visas who are trying to come to this country. Valid visas, can't get in because they're going to shut down Africa. Air France won't fly there.
It's over.
Already.
Well,
It's
Certain
over.
segments
It's
are
right.
shut down, and
Travel,
people are dying.
Travel to
Right.
Africa is over.
Now, isn't that
At
interesting?
this point, it's over now.
It happens at the same time the Chinese are
Right,
up in there.
right,
Now,
right,
who's
exactly.
really at fault for this? Is this a dual conspiracy between China and major
yeah.
corporations? What's going on here?
Well,
To
is there a
kill a
relationship?
mass
Is there a
amount of
relationship between America and China? And for your viewing purposes, read David Rockefeller and find out what the relationship is between China and the United States.
Are they trying to remove black folk out of Africa
Yes.
and
Well-
put a replacement population in because they want the minerals?
Well, think about it. They
the
already
minerals.
have...
Is that possible?
They already
Minerals.
have the minerals. They already
But there's
have the
so much
resources.
more
It's
minerals.
the people now who
But
are
they are
becoming
in the way.
obsolete.
But that's an
They're in the
interesting
way.
point. There are millions of Chinese right now on the ground in Africa.
When the
there
first
are thousands
outbreaks
in Detroit
when the
taking over
first-
wherever black is.
When the first outbreaks of Ebola took place in the DNC, the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Congo.
Okay, the place is so rich, you can spit on
Yes.
the ground and stuff will grow.
Yes.
But they
Absolutely.
can't
Yes.
get bulldozers that will plow roads from the farmland
Right,
to the
right.
villages to
Absolutely.
even feed
To
their own
feed
people.
themselves.
It's a travesty.
They're about to cut off West Africa.
Right.
They're very familiar
they're
with
cutting
North
it off.
Africa. They're going to cut
They're
West
cutting it off.
Africa off, and they're going to take
and
place.
black folk don't seem to care in this country. That is
Crazy.
scary.
Sierra Leone, diamonds.
Global depopulation. Up next on Khari, Free at Last on Bounce23 TV. Welcome back to Khari, Free at Last. I'm Khari Enaharo. Joining me is TalkTainmentRadio.com host Earth Jallow, the Reverend John Coates, and Donella Martin-Braddix. Top global population policymakers say that 500 million people on the Earth, nearly a 93% reduction from the current population, is ideal. Dr. Henry Kissinger wrote, depopulation should be the highest priority of U.S. foreign policy toward the third world. Is the Ebola pandemic a global plan for massive depopulation. Earth Jallow, I turn to you on this.
Absolutely. You know, when you have a land that is so rich with minerals and resources, and then the people there are starving, have been starving, been disenfranchised for eons.
Polluted waters.
Polluted waters, can't feed themselves because of the corporations and the pollutants in the soil. You know, then, then I think that when America and all the other countries come in and they see these resources, what do you do? What do you do with the people? You have to get rid of
It's
them.
been long talked about, Reverend Coates, that they wanted to, some theories say they want to get the world from 7 billion to 2 billion to 500 million. I'm sure you're familiar with these theories.
Well,
They've been
first of all,
pushed around for
it's
long
not a
time.
theory. It hasn't just been talked about. The planning took place. The planning took place publicly.
Talking about Iron Mountain?
Al Gore, Vice President of the United States, represented our country in Africa when he went to the Depopulation Summit that took place in Egypt back in the late 90s.
I remember.
It was an open meeting, open planning where they talked about the depopulation of the world,
Well, that's what
specifically
the
the third world.
That's what the Green Movement
Exactly.
talks about. That's
Exactly.
what the environmentalist movement talks
Exactly.
about. They all talk about population reduction, and most of it is in the so-called third world.
Is in the third world.
Franz
And the
Fanon's
third world
misguided
is the
concept.
first
Right,
world,
yeah.
is the first world, is the most
Absolutely.
populated
that
society.
word third world is a tricky
Yes,
term.
I don't like that term
I don't
at
like
all.
that. Yeah, go ahead.
And may I add, let's not forget, in 2012, Dr. Charles Arnson, who was one of the scientists who was spearheading one of the so-called efforts to decrease Ebola, he was caught on camera actually joking, saying one of the ways to decrease the population in Africa and not deal with the problem of trying to feed everyone is to mimic the conditions that happen in the movie Contagion.
Wow. Let's don't forget Prince Philip. Let's
Yeah.
don't forget Prince Charles. Let's don't forget any of these, or even Bill and Melinda Gates.
Well,
and
since
all
you
of
mentioned-
these
well,
people
let's not
are talking
leave- let's
about
not-
managing population.
Let's not leave the United Kingdom. Let's go back to the United Kingdom because one of the things that they're telling us about Ebola is that it is not airborne, that you
Right.
cannot catch it because you cannot catch it. It doesn't fly through the air.
Which is not
But
true.
well, we don't know that.
We don't know.
They just
but we
found
do
an
know-
airborne strain of Ebola.
We know there's five different, and by the way,
Right.
there's five
Five
different
different
strands of it.
strands, right.
But
At least.
the British government, according to the BBC, is doing a research right now because they believe that it is
airborne.
So
Wow.
our government's telling us that it's not. The Brits are saying that it possibly is. You know, what are we to believe?
And then you have the children who now have the respiratory issue, so we don't know really what's going on.
And the President of the United States, just in July of 2014, this year, signed an executive order to quarantine anyone with a respiratory illness,
on now.
excluding influenza.
Come on.
Wait a minute. So we are getting ready to see something real heavy. We ain't trying to
Absolutely.
scare people. What we're trying to do is educate
and
people
inform.
and get them focused. Get out of that
Get
football
ready.
game
Right.
and pay attention to what's happening to this
Prepare.
Ebola crisis
Absolutely.
because something is getting ready to go down.
Absolutely.
Is depopulation real, Earth?
I think it is real, absolutely. I think because when you start creating diseases and germs in
But
labs...
to go from 7 billion to 500 million?
See, the universe has its own way of naturally replenishing and repopulating the earth. And when we as humans start getting into that, you start upsetting the balance of what this world is supposed to be.
The Georgia Guidestones, I'm sure you're familiar with those, Reverend. Down in Georgia, you seen those stone things that set up like a Stonehenge?
Yes,
Yeah,
American
yeah.
Stonehenge,
Yeah.
yes.
And they say the ideal population is 500 million.
How they gonna tell
This
us
is
what
massive
the
genocide.
what
it's
the
certainly
ideal
genocide.
population
The
is?
same genocide that the United Nations stated that it's against. But we're unaware. We will be victimized, continuously victimized by different forms of genocide if we're not aware. So as long
Absolutely.
as our attention is distracted,
Right.
even if it's involuntarily or involuntarily, we're going to become victims and
But
victims
this
and
is
more
the
victims
whole
by a greater
world
number.
that's going to be affected
yeah.
by
And
this.
yes, absolutely. What we see now in parts of Africa are literal ghost towns where
Because
you have...
if this stuff
Yes.
gets airborne, everybody
Is at risk.
Everybody is at risk of this. Man,
Absolutely.
this is scary.
Very frightening.
You have to build up your immune system. You know, every time we see one of these things, it's talking about to focus on the germ, focus on the germ. And like you said, not focus on what's being going on in these labs, not focusing on what the UN was doing over there when they discovered this outbreak. There's other things that causes excessive bleeding,
But
and we
if
have
you
to stop
cut the world's
being naive.
population from 7 billion, don't you destroy economies?
You destroy economies, you destroy
How does it it survive?
The land,
Okay, well,
it may not.
well, it is going to
Is it?
survive, especially in Africa. You don't need the people anymore. The resources are already controlled. It's just a
The
money.
Chinese have got them,
Yes,
and other
absolutely.
people have got them.
So
So
that-
you just take, you just
But what's
eliminate
gonna
the
happen in
And
the
when
long
we
run?
see Africa, what do we see? We see a whole bunch of people running around half-clothed. We see dirty environment.
The
we see
racist images.
We see,
on
but we do
television.
see corrupt governments. Now, of course, they don't show us why the government is
Right,
corrupt,
of
but we
course.
see corrupted governments, so the people don't have the degree of sensitivity towards it. They say, well, if they die, they die.
well.
Right,
Let them
right,
die. Let them die, because maybe they're not doing anything with what
Instead
they
of going
have.
over and
Exactly.
seeing
Yes.
where they actually come from
Why
and
aren't
seeing
we
that they're not
concerned about this
half-clothed.
population issue? Why are we not focusing on this? Isn't this a form of genocide?
Well, you know, it's
absolutely.
mind-boggling when we think of what's going on in Africa with the genocides that people are
wars,
committing
Yeah.
against each other. What's an African life worth? And I think that's the question we need to ask ourselves, because you have situations where millions of Africans die prematurely each year, and we do nothing about it. It doesn't matter, and we look at Africa as a lost,
It
hopeless
doesn't
continent.
phase our consciousness at all.
Africans in America, those are people that are from the continent, first and second generation, that are
Originally,
right
yes.
here, are about to experience what Arab Americans experienced after 9/11.
I tell you what, coming to America, up next on Khari, Free at Last on Bounce23 TV. Welcome back to Khari Free at Last on Bounce23 TV. I'm Khari Enaharo. Joining me is TalkTainmentRadio.com host Earth Jallow, the Reverend John Coates, and Donella Martin-Braddix. President Obama, meeting with the Center for Disease Control, said the Ebola virus outbreak in Africa is a U.S. national security priority. What does Obama know that we don't know? Is Ebola coming to America? What does President Obama know that we don't know?
Well, the least that he knows is whatever was on the script, okay? We know that he traveled all the way from Washington to Atlanta,
We didn't
Georgia,
have to.
to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. Why take the trip? Because he realizes, or whoever is behind the presidency realizes that when he travels, the international media travels with him. It's the attention. He's has announced that he is sending 3,000 troops to Africa. Listen, this is the largest deployment of soldiers on the African continent since July of 1940. That's the Second World War. Okay, so what are they going to do? They're going to control the borders, the airports. There'll be some medical personnel there.
Retake the nation.
But they're going to, this is the largest
Retake
deployment
the nation.
of boots on the ground. I think that's what we say now.
Using the
This is gonna
disease
take
to
place.
justify retaking the
And
continent?
it's West Africa.
Oh.
It's West Africa. Everything has a seaport to
Right,
it.
right.
And it's rich minerally. The soil's rich. The cobalt and uranium is there.
So
And
you go
diamonds.
in, you create a disease, you, on unsuspecting people, you create a pandemic, you use words that Earth was talking about to escalate it, then you send the military in to control the region of the continent that has all the mineral riches.
Right.
Is that right?
That's right. And you tell
Is
the
that
people,
the scenario?
and you tell the people we need to control the spread of this.
It's about a
from
humanitarian
coming to
issue.
America.
Right.
We don't want it to come here. So what we're going to do is we're going to control all the borders and all of the airports and everything else, and we're going to use
And you
our
use
boots on
the
the ground to do it.
African-American president to sell it. Is that right, Donella?
Yes, and it sickens me. It sickens me so much because what's going on over there is terrible. Not only do you have ghost towns, you have people who can't even bury their dead.
Yeah, walking past them.
Right, and then so to have it now where travel is going to be limited, if not
But this
completely
is a
eliminated.
humanitarian effort,
And,
Donella.
and what should be
Or is
happening
it?
is that refugees should be able to come to the United States and other countries like they would do, you know, for other
Well, they won't let
citizens of
'em
other
in.
nations.
Not anymore.
They won't let 'em in.
That day
And
is over.
Right, and so what we have to ask ourselves is what are we doing? Are we trapping the African people on a continent of sickness in order to let them die and keep them completely
Is
isolated?
Ebola coming to America?
Well, it already came to America when you had the two white people who were flown out of Africa back here.
Wait, back to the middle
But
of the country.
miraculously
Wait,
cured.
they flew them from Africa. They flew two people that have Ebola
Atlanta.
back from Africa to the center of the country.
Yeah.
It was inbound. They sent them to Georgia.
So wait a minute,
yeah,
is the
already
Ebola
here.
virus a cover to retake the continent?
I believe so.
Is this what's happening here?
I believe so.
It very well may be.
I don't think there's
you have
any
military
has good
bases.
intentions
You
here.
have military bases already that we already know have been set up over there over the last few years.
Well, first
So
of all, let's look at it. Let's look at it. North Africa has fallen apart within the last 3 years. Egypt is down. Libya is down. Okay, it's happening. So now we're going to take West Africa.
Right.
We're going to control it.
That's to be the whole continent.
So what do? Run the Chinese out?
No.
Is this a scramble between the Chinese and the Western powers?
No, they working together.
Or maybe a combined effort.
Keeping up appearances.
Absolutely.
So the appearance looks like there's a difference, but there's no difference.
There has to be a boogeyman.
So what does Obama know that we don't know?
You know, he may be knowing that there might be an outbreak. He might know that this was created in a lab. He may know what is actually coming down the pike. Again, we are not discussing.
Can we give him the benefit of the doubt on this?
Nope. Because
Well,
we have not
absolutely
found
not.
out what them FEMA coffins is for.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't make any difference if we give them the benefit of the doubt. What we need to do is become aware and find out what we need to do.
Be
in order to
informed.
protect ourselves.
Get prepared.
I would recommend all
Get
of
prepared.
us be aware and be
Absolutely.
informed.
Get prepared.
Thanks to TalkTainmentRadio.com host Earth Jallow, the Reverend John Coates, and Donella Martin-Braddix. And thank you for watching Khari Free at Last on Bounce23 TV.